What's up, brothers and sisters? It's your brother G World 7 underscore D. I want to emphasize something. Now, this is David Imhotep's book. The first Americans were African, expanded and revised edition. Now, I showed you this before. I don't know if this is this is the expanded and revised edition. And I showed you this before, like I said, but I want to emphasize something. Go to page, let's go to page 238, right here. I'm going to read this, and I may highlight a few things, but I want you to pick up on certain things. What I said, I may just show a few things in the book. All right. While we are dealing with iron, there is one more ancient iron mine worth mentioning in pre-Columbus North America, even though it was on the other side of the Mississippi River from Ohio's Adena iron smelters. Where there is one, there are likely to be others that have not yet been discovered. The ancient iron smelters of Missouri probably used this iron mine. A Smithsonian Institute archaeologist W. H. Holmes and the city archaeologist for St. Louis D. L. Bushnell confirmed the pre-Columbus operation of an iron mine in Franklin County, near Leslie, Missouri. They found the prehistoric mine was about 100 feet wide, running about 150 feet long to a depth of 20 feet. The passageway extended even below the present floor of the mine. The scientists recovered some 1,000 stone mining tools, sleds, hammerheads, and weights that had been piled near the entrance. According to Medieval Technology Department of the American History of the Center for Medieval Studies at Pennsylvania State University, Penn State, the Native Americans of the Amerindians had some experience with extracting precious metals but had not mastered the art of iron extraction. That knowledge was to arrive at Europeans. Black dwarfs in Europe were well known for their iron smelting abilities. Amerindians were not. Also, if the reader remembers, Cyrus Thomas from the Smithsonian Institute commented on the Indian mounds in America. There was a race of mound builders in America distinct from the American Indian. Distinct from means that Amerindians did not build mounds. A dwarf skeleton was found in another mound in Waverly, Ohio, which did not contain the presence of a dwarf. The artifacts excavated in the ancient mounds of the New World indicate that Africans built many of these mounds. I'm not going to use the term African, but okay, the fact that many art styles and artifacts recovered these mounds illustrate similar themes, suggesting origin for the mound builders from a common ideological system. Let me show you a little bit what it says right there. There was a race of mound builders in America distinct from the American Indian. Distinct from means that Amerindians did not build mounds. A dwarf skeleton was found in another mound of Waverly, Ohio, which did not contain the presence of a dwarf. All right. Lastly, we have the pipe in question. During the 1901 Ohio Historical Society, archaeologists were excavating Chillico in the burial mound number 12. They found an extraordinary effigy pipe of a man dressed in Adena attire exhibiting dwarfism, and I've shown you that before. We, therefore, have 4 pieces of evidence that suggest that the people responsible for smelting iron in ancient Illinois were dwarfs. Amerindians did not smelt iron in pre-Columbian times. Amerindians did not build mounds. The presence of dwarfs was found in 2 separate mounds. In ancient Illinois, a dwarf skeleton, an effigy pipe of a dwarf dressed in Adena attire. Over and over in his book, Mallory insists that the Viking Norsemen built all the mounds and iron smelting furnaces, but just as with Fell, where is the evidence to prove his case? To Mallory's credit, he admits that no genuine artifact used by the Norse have ever been found in America. Unfortunately, Mr. Mallory, no evidence, no argument. No evidence, no argument. Just as in Fell's 1982 case, neither his Celts, the mythical king, nor the Viking Norsemen could have built megalithic mounds with or without the iron smelting furnaces in ancient America. There is, however, a story that the Vikings have admitted to. When they needed iron, they had no problem going to the black dwarfs, just as the Viking god of thunder. Thor went to the mythical dwarfs for their irons. Thor went to the mythical dwarfs for their iron. In Viking mythology, even the god Thor went to the black dwarf blacksmith masters to have his hammer made. Thor's hammer in Adak, Scandinavian people before their Christianization tradition, it is an iron weapon forged by Swiftafar, black elves, correlated with Divergar, dwarfs, named as Sindra, Brucka. Okay, pardon me for the pronunciation. All right. Thor was a Viking mythology, but the Vikings' message to us is obvious. They either did not make iron in those early times during the formation of Viking mythology tales, or the dwarfs' iron was so well made that they found it best for the dwarfs to make it for them. The fact that they were so specific that they even named the dwarfs blacksmiths shows how they relied on these experts. In reality, these were probably short-statured men who actually made metal for Vikings. There is, however, actual physical evidence of these dwarfs making iron in Scandinavia. The Osberg sledge can be seen today at the Viking Ship Museum in Oslo, Norway. This sleigh runners were made of iron. All right. When you observe the carvings in the sleigh, you will see the dwarfs themselves depicted. These dwarfs' ancestors, the Khoisan, are a testament to the diminutive Africans entering Europe 40,000, 45,000 years ago, bringing their metal smelting skills with them from Africa. Some of their descendants were most likely the mound builders who built the iron smelting furnaces along the Ohio River. Notice the short height of these people with African cornrow hairstyles. Also, see the females projecting pragmatic jaw structure and protruding fleshy lips. On their sleighs, these first Europeans had wooden runners. Years later, the blacksmiths forged and began to make metal runners, which were smoother, creating a less resistant, producing a faster sleigh and a longer-lasting runner. All right, and I'm going to show you the Oslo sleigh. I'm going to show you part where here it is, right here. It's in David Imhotep's book, but here on the side of it, I have another book. You see these diminutive Negroes. Just like you see some of the original people in America, these diminutive Negroes. Also built the mounds. Original people built the mounds with these diminutive Negroes. These black folks had the technology. They had iron. They were smelting iron. All right, they weren't using no freaking copper too. They were smelting iron. That's how they carved into the rock. And they were to carve and to design into these ancient megalithic rocks that you see all over the world. They use iron. That's what they use. They use iron. All right. They use iron to carve into rock, to cut and to chisel, not copper. The copper might have been used to fining it up more, but they use iron. I'm gonna read something else too, because I'm gonna follow up on that, because that's Dr. David Imhotep talking about the um, black Vikings. All right. But I'm gonna go follow up even more with David McRitchie's book. I'm gonna go back to David McRitchie's book. Go back to his book, and it says you got to pick up on a lot of things when you do your research. All right, stuff is like a jigsaw puzzle. All right, going back to David McRitchie's book, Ancient Modern Britain. So I'm gonna go to page, I want to say 198 or 3. See, 198, 193. We got here. Okay. In this chapter. And I'm not going to read the whole chapter. I'm just going to read certain things, and so you can pick up on what part I'm going to read. Let's see. I read that part about land pirates before recently. But I'm going to read this part. Okay. It is pretty clear that, although allied to the open corals still used in whales and fashioned of the same materials, yet the skin boats in which these various practical races venture out to sea and perform voyages of several days' duration could not have been of the same eggshell formation, or they would have been swamped by the first chopping sea they encountered. Let it be remembered that, by several lines of argument, indicate to some extent in previous chapters, scientific men have reached the conclusion that a race not unlike the modern Eskimo inhabited certain parts of western and northwestern Europe at about the dawn of the Christian era. It will be seen that if those sea corals were themselves not unlike the kayaks of the modern Eskimos, or even exactly like them, there would be nothing surprising in the fact that this was really the case. I shall point out subsequently. In the meantime, it is sufficient to be content with the assumption that the Eskimo kayak and the Scythian sea coral were identical, grounded on the fact that no other shape of skin boat could live in a tempestuous sea. All right. Thus, the Picts and Scots may have been transmarine nations in a very wide sense, since by many links they are connected with other Scythian nations more remote from southern Britain than they were. The Silures and the Spaniards of their time were seen to be both Picts, and they, along with other indigenous British tribes, inhabited interior England and a large part modern Scotland, as well as the black and painted races of Ireland, were also shown to have possessed many common characteristics and to have closely resembled each other in several physical traits. And the Picts and Scots, specifically so named, although each title appears to have been a generic nickname and nothing else, may thus have been transmarine, not only because they dwelt on the further side of the Irish Sea and the Firth of Darkness, that, save for the mountain range that skirts the eastern side of Loch Lomond, which have severed the bulk of Scotland from the larger section of the island, not only because they were apparently of kindred of the more distant Picts of the Spanish Peninsula and the islands, but also because they themselves, the Picts of the British Islands, are traditionally said to have come originally from that part of Scythia, lying on the eastern side of the North Sea. The exact locality fixed upon by some being no other than the Chersonese, the Kimbrica, that promontory that is now called Fluteland, out of which some centuries later issued the Black Danes, or Kimbra, so that the Picts proper and the Black Danes, being both Picts and both Moors, and both being black strangers of dubbed Gauls, in the sight of the white races of Britain, coming, as they appear to have done, from the same locality, present themselves as not improperly akin. So far, let me get it. Let me get a clear image of this, okay? Hope I can get this real clear. Okay, so far, however, we have only decided with regards to the early Scots that they were the associates of swarthy, piratical, painted races of a black Eskimo or a Negrito Mongoloid. I repeat, of a black Eskimo or a Negrito Mongoloid strain, without reaching the conclusion that the Scots themselves were of the same complexion. Now, I'm going to stop there, man. I'm going to stop there. I said before how the original Vikings who sailed over here to the Americas were those short, diminutive blacks. They were the original Vikings. Those little short type of Khorasan or Twa type black people who were the original Vikings who sailed the sea. And I remember I told you before, the original people who built these mounds in America were diminutive, short stature people. Later on, taller brothers and sisters did it. All right? Because look at some of the mounds, entrances there, like they built where a short person can get in. Or maybe a taller person, they might have just bent over and got in later on. But the diminutive black were the original black that populated this world, this planet. And then the other blacks came after that. All right, but they were smelting iron. They were smelting iron. The reason I brought that up and brought up the whole Thor thing and how they went to the blacksmith smelting iron is that the fact they were smelting iron here in the Americas, and he was doing that, smelting the iron here in the Americas, and it was also not only carved into rock using iron, not copper, but they also was the mining for gold here in the Americas, because you had gold over in the Americas, particularly in the West. The Americas had the riches here. And we need to start understanding this. This information is so in your face, man. But maybe because of the fact that I studied this and I specialized in this. But this is information that you need to pick up on. And in David Imhotep's book, I want to also show you the Akkadian and the so-called white Viking, when the Vikings were actually black. But look at it, the Akkadian. The Akkadian. Look at their little horn and the cow horns and the helmet. And you seen certain tribes in Africa with that. And then also you see the images of like Egyptian gods and goddesses would have that. So like their little cow horns in their head. Not the helmet, but the cow horns. All this stuff, and I read before how the Egyptians settled in those areas too. They settled in different parts of Europe. All this stuff connects with one another. See, the problem is when you hear your traditional black scholars, they talk about Egypt and they talk about some West African empires. They don't talk about the American empires and the black empires in Asia, and start connecting all of them together. They have not done that. They just give you stuff in fragments because most of them don't know. A lot of them are afraid to actually study real history because they got to realize that what they've been teaching, been misteaching, misinformation, and basically lying to our people. This is why we got to do some real studying. This is why I say that most black Americans are not descendant of African slaves. That's the biggest lie that you've been told, because there weren't that many slaves brought here. Even the slaves brought over here, they mixed in like in Brazil. Those black people in Brazil, all them Negroes in Brazil, they're a combination of Aboriginal blacks, and then they mixed in with some Africans. Now, Africans did go to Brazil, but they mixed in with the Aboriginal blacks who were already there. And many of them Aboriginal blacks who were there who did not be able to escape, become prisoners of war, they were just reclassified themselves over there too. They made them into Negroes too. So they lost their identity too. They're a combination of Aboriginal blacks and Africans there in Brazil, while we're a combination of Aboriginal blacks and black Europeans and some black Mongoloid and few Africans here in America. But most of us are Aboriginal here, some black so-called Mongoloid and heavily black Europeans, because they were being expelled out of Europe. The black nobility being expelled out of Europe, and it was some went to North Africa, but many of them came here. Some of them went to Asia, but many of them came here, and they mixed in with the black people here. So when you hear a lot of these black people, when you start studying a lot of these black groups in America, and you look at some of these names, they're not names of white slave masters. They're names of black nobility. They have ancient black Scottish names, the ancient black British names. These are names of Negroes, like King James of Britain and Scotland. He's a king of the two unified nations, of the two countries. All right. So we have to understand that our history is just not confined to so-called West Africa and you being brought up in slave ship. That is some white man sick racist fantasy, and that's bigoted, and that's a lie. And unfortunately, so many black scholars have bought into that lie. That's not our history, so we got to throw that out the window. We need to start studying our real history, so we got to really dig deep into it. That's why I get on some of these foreign Negroes who continue to, like the Amaweli African idiot. Well, he may be from America, but he's an idiot. He's a Pan-African jackass telling you that the original people in America weren't black. That's a damn lie, because they were. And there's very different black groups who came here. Like I said, the black Vikings were here. And the original black Vikings who came here were diminutive, short-statured Negroes. The Skrellings that you find in Canada, originally in Canada, Alaska, those are Negroes, originally were Negroes. You have various different type of black people. They have the Egyptians from different colonies that they had sailed here to the Americas. All right. And then you had the black people here selling out, and then you had black people from Asia coming here. It was always um, a round trip effect that they're selling back and forth to different places, and they're trading goods. Our people have always done that. This is why I don't understand these Negro historians teaching you that you're just a slave from Africa, or even using the term I'm the descendant of African slave. That's ridiculous. Number one, black Americans are not African. I keep emphasizing this. We are aboriginal to this land. That makes our argument even stronger. We are aboriginals to this land, and we have various different of the aboriginal black tribes mixed in us. Plus the fact is, when a lot of the black empires start to go down, let's say in areas in Central and South America, many of them came and mixed in with the tribes that were in the southern part of the United States, particularly Florida to Texas. They mixed in with a lot of those black people. So when you start doing this research, man, it's in your face. It's really in your face. This information is there, but you're going to have to want to learn it and study it. You can't Google it. And I'm sick of people, I just Google it. No, that's stupid. You cannot Google this information. You're going to have to do real research. You're going to have to put in the effort. Some instances, you're going to have to spend some money. But the information is there. But it's for you to want to know this information. If you want to learn this information, it's there for you to obtain, to retrieve it. To obtain that knowledge, to retrieve it, and to read it, and to know how to comprehend it, and to understand it, and know how to disseminate the information like the way I'm doing it. This is very important. This is our history. And we've been lied to. White folks has given us their little fake ass, their little history, and stole ours. They're not indigenous to no place on this planet. They weren't the Vikings. They weren't the Greeks. They weren't the Romans. They were nothing. They have hijacked every goddamn thing. They have taken everything, and they have distorted history to the fullest. I know that they're liars. I know that they're a bunch of damn liars. And have hijacked every goddamn thing, man. And then want to sit there and say we steal other people's history. Like I said before, all you got to do is study certain parts of the world. It was too damn hot and too warm, and the way people dress for pale people to be indigenous in those regions, that including the Americas, even around the areas of Peru. It was too damn warm for a bunch of pale-skinned white people to be, or so-called Mongoloids to be indigenous to that region. That's a joke. But you have to think critically. And unfortunately, brothers and sisters, you pay thousands of dollars in college, but you're not taught to think critically in college. You're taught to basically memorize some books that your teacher told you to read, or some Negro scholar or some white so-called scholar told you to read, but not to critically evaluate or question things. You're not taught that. And that's the problem. Once you start studying this so-called slave narrative, it started to become a joke, because most of our people were already here. We didn't need white folks to bring us over here. I'm tired of Negroes saying that. White folks didn't bring us over here. We were already over here. And then you have some sellout blacks who took part in expelling black leadership and rule over lands over in Europe, and expelling them Negroes here. And unfortunately, you did have a lot of these black Europeans who came here and start warring and killing some of the black people here. That did happen. So that's why I said when we study our history, when we truly study our history, there's a lot of things we're not going to like. So, brothers and sisters, that's what I'm trying to emphasize to you. I want you to study your history, learn your history, love your history. It will empower you. It will uplift you. And when you hear Negroes say we don't need to know our history, we just need to live for today, they are a damn enemy and they are a jackass. Peace and love. Brother G World.